audio and video, further added unprecedented impetus to facilitating the arduous task of teaching and learning languages. This presentation is the application of recent techniques in mass media technologies to the teaching of reading and writing skills in the language as a tool for facilitating a better understanding of the orthographic system. This will, in itself, guide the adult language teachers and learners on how best to read and write the language accurately and in a consistent manner based on a one sound, one letter correspondence. The relevant sounds in a loop. Most of the examples in this presentation are drawn from Mozua 2020 by gbare was said. Our major concern in this segment of the work is to present the adult sounds used by the speakers in their day-to-day interactions. This will then form the basis of and serve as a guide to identify the appropriate letters of the Roman alphabet that should be used in writing the language. This is because the reading form of a language derives from its spoken form. That is, a language is first spoken before it is written, and not the other way around. It is established in Mozua 1987, 89, 2003, 2010, and 2020, etc., that the relevant sounds required for effective communication it will consist of 39 articulated speech sounds, in addition to 3 distinctive tones: the high tone, the low tone, and the rising tone. The high and low tones contrast, in other words, usually the noun, whereas the low tone contrasts with the rising tone on adult verbs in the imperative mode, in citation form, that is, verbs in isolation. Tonal differences will not be discussed at this stage of the presentation. Edo vowels. Edo has a total of 12 vowels in 8 phonetic inventory. This is made up of 7 oral and 5 nasal vowels. 2 of the oral vowels, that is the A and the O, do not have the corresponding nasal vowels. In other words, there are no distinctive A and O in the language. However, all the 7 oral vowels are nasalized when they immediately follow any of the 5 nasal consonants in the language. These vowels will be presented in their sustained audio forms and their corresponding phonetic symbols using the International Phonetic Alphabet, that is the ABiDi symbol. So what we're going to do here, each of the sounds we are going to, let's say that is the 39 sounds identified for the language, I am going to produce any of them because I'm the native speaker. So if any person cannot recognize any of the 39 sounds, means it's not a perfect equal native speaker of the language. So the phonetic symbol you will see in brackets are the sounds, not the letters at all, because the focus is first on the spoken form. Because a language exists, as I said earlier, spoken before it is written. And that is one of the problems we're having, because what we were introduced to in the schools is giving you the reading forms to be able to learn the language. That is the wrong approach. So, Edo oral vowels. The following 7 oral vowels are present in the language. E, A, A, U, O, these are the oral vowels. Edo nasal vowels. Edo has 5 distinctive nasal vowels. When we say distinctive, it means you can use such vowels to have new words in the language. That is contrasted with other words with the corresponding oral vowels. So we have 5 of such nasal vowels, and these are E, A, U, O, Edo consonants. So we are left with the 12 vowels in the language. 7 are oral and 5 are nasal. So we're going to look at the consonants now. And the consonants are 27. 27 in number. 22 of the 27 consonants are oral, whereas the remaining 5 are nasal. So let us look at them. So the 22 oral consonants are as follows. B, 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 T, D, C, Z, R, 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 Li, Yi, Ki, Di, Bi, Ri, Bi, Bi, We, and He. So these are the 22 oral consonants. Let us look at the nasal ones. There are 5 of them. And these are me, re, ni, ye, we. Is there any of those that cannot identify themselves with all this consonant? No. Because the ye exists, the we exist as a consonant, the me exists, the we exist, and then the me. So those are the 5. They are all distinctive. Vowels and consonants in Edo words. The audio and pictorial forms of the Edo vowels and consonants are presented in the words in which they occur. So we are presenting them alphabetically. And the same what we did here is to present common words in which such vowels are found in the language. And I don't think any person here who speaks Edo will not recognize any of this the picture. That is why we use the picture form, the audiovisual, so that the learner, especially our young children here, will be able to fixate the sound, picture, and the word that is associated with them. So you have the as I earlier pronounced, the is found in labalaba. The labalaba in Edo is also called a humudialia. Then it is also found in Atalapa. You have it in Aga and then in Akasan. There are many words like that. Then you have the sound A. Remember, we are dealing with the sounds, not the letter sound. We have the sound A, which is found in the word ABiDi. That is leaves. And then the books you read, they are all ABiDi Edo. And then it is also found in gbare. Then we have the vowel group. We have the vowel E, and we have the vowel O, Oduma, Odo, and the vowel O, Oka, Ogo. The vowel U, Uko, Utu, is Wuzu. The audio particular forms of Edo nasal vowels presented alphabetically in words in which they occur. So we'll begin with the nasal vowel. So we have that sound in Iga. That is the picture of Iga there. And then we have it in Unawa. We have it in Okwan. Then the vowel, the nasal vowel in and the nasal vowel in easy, Esin, Edin, Udin. And the fifth one, which is Pom, in Upom. Ihiro, Edo, Anyo. And you have, the fifth nasal vowel, that is the U, in Ubun, Edu, Utu. The consonants. What the same thing will be for the vowels is what we are going to do for the consonants. So let us say that. You know that consonants first. So we have a B in a B. Like I said, a B can be deep or the book you read. So here, the picture you have there is a ball in there. And then a B. And a verba. Verba is that place you use in wrapping rice. It's so cool. Then the consonant D in Oduma, Odo, Edo, Udi, and the consonant C, not F. C, that is the consonant, the sound, is better in Ophiotto, Efiofio, Ofe, Ifi, and the consonant D in Adio. The consonant B in Agada. Ebalada. Igbo. Ohobo. And the consonant V in Odede. Ehu. Igbo. So you have the pictures of all these things displayed there. And the consonant he in Inyoro, Uho, Ahe, Ehie. The consonant Ki in Ako, Eko, Ekasu, Eka, Ukoko. That is the picture of Ukoko there. Bye. Then the consonant in a week. Iyaro. Uhure. Elohim. The consonant P in a Papahuana, that is scorpion, a Papahuana. Then you have a Ikped, that is C. Like you also have Ifaba, and then it is present in Uku. The consonant Li is present in a Tolotolo, a Pelepele, Ozipalo, Olo, Egile. The consonant P in Opia and in Papa, here in Papebe. The consonant RI, which many Edo speakers cannot actually produce. It is the RI consonant that you find in Akara, Olu, Efawofo, Ekire, Ole, Koroka, Ero. The consonant RI is in Oporu, Urupa, Eru, Ehan. The consonant RI in Iri, Ore, those are the props. Okay, Ore. So there are three different R sounds. The RI, the RI, and the RI. C in Asele, Ise, Isai, Ukuse. T in Utum. This is the species of Utum that is called Utum Pepelu. Atete, Otien, Ite. The consonant V in Uvum, Ibie, Ibe, Eguato. The consonant V in gbare. That is the full form. But with the additions that people are fond of doing, they simply say gbare. The full form is gbare. You have it in ABiDi. You have it in Edo, as we saw earlier. The consonant we in Oyibo, Ibewe, Owe, Ewe, Ewu. The consonant yi in Oyiya, Uye. The consonant Z in Bazabaza. Some people will say Zabazaba. Is enough for Ozi. So these are the 22 oral consonants in the language that we just presented. So when we listed, there is also a zeta. Okay. So we move on to the nasal consonants. And like I said, there are 5 of them. The first is me in a man. So see a plate of silver there. And then a man. I'm again a maple. Yes. A maple. Then you have the nasal consonant me in ume. Ume. Olumu. Ufu. And the consonant ni in unye, eni, unu, inya. And the consonant wi in umome, ome, owo. Awa. The consonant ni in anyo, inya, enye, eni. So these are the 39 sounds, speech sounds in the language. And to be able to move to the next stage, which is writing the language, we must be able to, know each of the 39 sounds, because these are the only sounds used in the language, in addition to the tones that we have mentioned before. So let us see, because writing a language is completely different from from speaking it. Any person that grows up in a linguistic environment is able to speak that language perfectly, if you like, right? But writing is not the same. It is not because you are born Edo that you become automatically a good writer of the language. No. Writing is learned in a formal setting, usually the school environment. That's the difference. You can let children acquire language from their immediate environment, usually the house and all that. Okay? But writing has to be learned in a formal setting. And that is where we have been having problems, because every Edo speaker believes is a super writer. in the language, which is not correct. And that is why you have different versions of the same word. And when you see some words written in Edo, you cannot even recognize yourself as an Edo student. So this is because of that we brought this strategy of how to write the language. Let us look at that. The task in this section consists of identifying appropriate letters of the Roman alphabet. I didn't say English alphabet, Roman alphabet. To represent on a one sound, one letter basis each of the 39 sounds identified earlier in writing the language. So the strategy we are adopting here is the phonetic spelling strategy. Because Edo as an open syllable language, that is cutting ends in a consonant like English. So it is very easy to spell words in the language, using that as a sound. For instance, if I have a baba, I would say baba. And so when you already know the sounds that are present, you now look for equivalent symbols, that is letters of the alphabet to substitute. For instance, the A, we do the letter E, isn't it? And then the B is the same letter B, and then R, letter A, and so on and so forth. So let us say that. So before we do this, there are basic rules that must be followed very strictly. The first is that two different letters of the Roman alphabet must not be used to represent the same sound. For instance, when you represent the O you hear in the orca, you have it in Zephyr, you have it in Ekato. So it is the same sound. So we must not use different letters as we do currently, because what we are using today, the alphabetic system we are using was inherited from the colonial masters. And that is why you have a lot of inadequacies, inconsistencies, and a free-for-all kind of thing. So let us look at this. We have such very many inconsistencies in the English language. For instance, you have the letter A and the letter KL in the word night, and then north in the word night, and you also have it in night, night of Samuluba. So you see that the same sound is here represented with different letters of the alphabet, and that is not a good alphabetic system. Then the rule number 2, one letter of the alphabet must not be used to represent two different sounds. For instance, the way Edo is written by many people today, you see the read I pronounced earlier in Aro. And then you have the read in Osaro, for instance. But the alphabetic system left for us told us you represent the two with the same single R. And that has been corrected some years back in in a seminar like this in the University of Lagos, where it was adopted that double R should be used for words like Osaro. So if you are going to write Osaro, you write O-S-A-R-R-O with a subdot, which is compulsory. That subdot must be there. Otherwise, it is pronounced Osaro. So you have the inconsistencies in English. Examples are the OU, diagram OU, in the word through. So the sound U comes in there, and then you have the same OU in tough. So the OU is realized as up, and then U, and then you have it in L, and then off in box. So these are the inconsistencies in English that must not occur in Edo, because Edo is a phonetically based alphabetic system. 3, no sound should be left unrepresented. That is, every sound must be represented by one appropriate letter or diagram of the Roman alphabet. Such is the case currently in the Edo language. There are 2 sounds which I pronounce 5 nasal vowels, isn't it? But in writing, 2 of those nasal vowels are not represented. For instance, you have the yin in anyo. You have the win in owe. Those 2 sounds are not represented orthographically, and that is a very big minus. That kind of orthographic system cannot be said to be a correct and accurate orthographic system. The letters of the Roman alphabet corresponding to the sounds pronounced are placed under the phonetic symbols for the sound. So I use this as illustration on how to write, how to substitute the letter of the Roman alphabet for a given sound. And anywhere you hear that sound, you put that orthographic symbol. And that is the case of the in Egogo in red, and then in green, you use the letter E with a subdot, compulsorily with a subdot. Otherwise, it sounds A. Okay? Then you have the D, the sound D represented by this one. Okay, the D represented by the letter G. You see, letter G sound D. So if I'm going to spell Egogo, I will say E-D-O-D-O. Egogo. You see, anywhere you have the sound E, anywhere you have the sound N in the language and you want to write it, you use the letter E with a subdot. If you want to write O, you use the letter O with a subdot. It is compulsory. It's not a matter of choice. Otherwise, you have a different word. For instance, if you have a letter E-D-O without a subdot, it is not the word Edo. It is the word Edo. Edo is different from Edo. And that is why subdotting is a matter of fact. It's compulsory. It is important, and I think you will have to listen very carefully to this aspect of the word. Okay, we'll continue. So it is important to note that there is a marked difference between the Edo ABiDis, which are the sounds. These are the sounds in Edo, whereas the English ABCs are the letters with which they write the language. So you see where the problem came when they got us to use so that confusion is still there till tomorrow. For instance, in English, the letter A in writing is pronounced A, but it's a dictum. In the word like Kate, say, and so on and so forth. But the letter A corresponds to the dictum A in English. The letter E is pronounced E in the word fit in English. That is, the letter E corresponds to the sound E in the language. Similarly, the letter I is pronounced I, that is a dictum in the word kite, spite, bite, and so on and so forth. This means that the letter I of the Roman alphabet corresponds to the sound that is the dictum I in English. That is where we are going to see the difference. In Edo, however, the letter A of the Roman alphabet is pronounced A. It's pronounced A as in the word aga. This means that the letter A corresponds to the sound A in Edo. Then the letter E, pronounced A in Ebe, corresponds to the sound A. And the letter I, pronounced E in Efi, not I, corresponds to the sound E, not I, like the dictum I in English. This has been one of the sources of the confusion among many Edo writers. This is why some English speakers pronounce the first letter in the Edo names that you have there, Idahosa, Idubo, written with OR, which is wrong. It's supposed to be O with a suffix. And then Edosa, without the subject. So, these figures pronounce Idahosa, for instance, as Idahosa. Yes, it is something that actually happened. Because a friend who was in England, in the mid-70s, was in the class, as a new student. And then the lecturer was reading from the list. And he saw Idahosa, what is pronounced Idahosa, and he said, Idahosa. And the young man said, no, it's not Idahosa, it is Idahosa. He said, okay. Then he now wrote the name with E, the letter E as in evening. So you see the confusion. Then this error in pronunciation was promptly corrected by the bearers of the names as Idahosa, Idubo, and Josa, respectively. The same English listener wrote down what he heard as what we will pronounce here as Idahosa, right? Because he used the letter A. For an endosmeter, the letter A and the letter E corresponds to the sound A. So that is the source of the confusion. Just recently, an endosmeter posted this on a WhatsApp platform. They were saying, "Wadomo mean wine." That was what he intended to say. But you see, in green there, the I that, English to say I is what is put there to be pronounced as mean wine. Okay? And then where you see the correction there, the O-R, domo, there is nothing like that. It is O with a subdom. And like you have a catalog ending in O-R. That is wrong. It is O with a subdom. So we are going to represent the vowels, the 7 oral and the 5 nasal vowels, that is 12 vowels in the language using the picture presentation. So the oral vowels first, as I pronounced earlier. So you have the E, A, N, A, O, O, are represented in writing using the following letters of the alphabet. The letter I is used for the sound E. The letter E is used for the sound A. The letter E with a subdot is used for the sound E. And the letter A is used for the sound A. The letter U is used for the sound U. And the letter O for the sound O. Then the letter O with a subdot is used for the sound O. So anywhere you have any of those sounds pronounced, you use the appropriate letters of the Roman alphabet. So having exhausted the single letters I, E, A, U, O, the subdot was introduced to distinguish A from E and O from O. So without the subdot, we are not able to make that distinction. So you have a writing now. You can see the sound written in red there, and the letters, the appropriate letter in green. So the sound A is represented by the letter A of the Roman alphabet, as you have it in gbare. Then in a bit, you can see in green, it is the letter E. In green there. Then in the word egogo, you have there in green the letter E with a subdot. Then the sound E in Ifi, you have the letter I representing each of the sounds there. It's the same with the O in Odo. There is no difference in the form. Okay? No difference in the form. And then the O in Abo. That sound O is represented by the letter O with a subdot. Otherwise, the word will be pronounced as Abo. And that is not what was intended. Then the letter U represents the sound U. So no difference in form. Then for the nasal vowels, having exhausted the use of the single letters of the Roman alphabet, the 5 Edo nasal vowels are represented in writing using digraphs. What digraph means 2 letters representing a single sound. Okay? So let us look at that. You have there the digraph AN representing the sound then E with a subdot followed by N as a digraph represent the sound N, and then I, the letter I, followed by N as a digraph represent the sound E, and the O with a subdot followed by N represent the nasal vowel O. As we said earlier, we don't have the distinctive A and O, that is O without a subdot and N. It doesn't exist as a distinctive sound, but it can occur as a derived sound in the environment of a nasal consonant. So you see here in green, the digraph AN represents that sound. So anywhere you hear you substitute the letters AN as digraph. Then we have the A in Ebe. You can see that in green, the letter E with a subdot followed by the letter A. The 2 constitute a digraph representing that sound. Okay? Because Edo doesn't have a closed syllable. Like you have the word band in English, where the N is pronounced. In Edo, it's never done. So when you have B-A-N in Edo, it's simply band, not band. It's band. Then you have the letter I, followed by the letter N, as the 2 constitute a digraph representing the word in S. Then you have the O, let's say in green, O with a subdot followed by N, represent that sound O in Edo. Then the nasal vowel U in Edo. You can see there the digraph UM represent that sound. It's a single sound, okay? Edo. So now we'll move on to the representation of the consonants. As we said, there are 22 oral consonants and 5 nasal consonants. Okay, so let us look at that. As I pronounce the fourth, you have in alphabetical order, you have B, D, C, D, B, R, E, T, B, B, L, P, R, R, C, T, V, V, W, Y, Z. Those are sounds. So let us say the letters to be used in writing them. So you have the sound B is represented by the letter B of the Roman alphabet. So no different in form, as you have in green there. And you have in Oduma, the sound D is represented by the letter D. The sound C in Edo is represented by the letter F. You see the difference? Sound C, letter F. Then you have the D in Ogo, no difference in form, as you have it in Ogo. Then you have the D in Eho. He in Eho, represented by the letter H. You see the sound he by the letter H. Then the letter T, the sound T, represented by the letter K in Eki. You have the letter K written there in green. Then the sound Li is represented by the letter L of the Roman alphabet. No difference in form. The same with the P in Opia. So you have the letter P of the Roman alphabet representing that sound. And then it's also in the word Obekere. Then the ring, that problematic sound that many people cannot pronounce. In Ero is represented by a single R, single letter R. Then the sound C is represented by the letter S. By the letter S. Letter S for the sound C in Isane. Then the sound T in the word of time. You see that no difference in form because it is represented by the letter T. And then the sound V in Ivie is represented by the letter of the alphabet, that is V, the letter V. So no difference in form. Then the sound we in Owe is represented by the letter W. The sound we is represented by the letter W. and the sound yip in Oyiya. You see that in green, the letter Y of the Roman alphabet is used to represent that sound. The one written in red, pronounced in Oyiya. Then you have the Z in Oz. It is represented by the letter Z or the letter Z for the Americans. For the Americans, we say letter Z. Okay? The English will say letter Z. So, but for the sound, Z in Edo. Then, what we have just considered are the sounds written with single letters. But now we are going to see the following sound that must be written with diagrams. So the first is the B. The B. Then you have the V in Ogogo, for instance. You have the P in Abe. You have the P in Uku. You have the V in Eru or Urupa. Then you have the R in Ora. And then the V in Obe. So the V, the sound V, is represented by the diagram GD. GD are the letters. The two of them constitute a diagram. They represent that single sound B. Unlike what an average white person will say, for instance, in the word agbo, we will say agbo. So it is not, they are not two different sounds, E and B. It's a single sound. B is a gbare. Then you have the V represented by the letters and the diagram GH. GH representing the V in Ogede. Thank you, sir. Okay, and then you have the T in Ahe, represented by the diagram KH. You have the P in Uku, represented by the diagram KP. KP. And then the P in Eru, Urupa, and so on and so forth, represented by the diagram RH. RH for the sound creep. Then you have the sound re in Iri, represented by the diagram RR, double R representing that single sound. And that was what I said earlier. If you are going to, if your name is Osaro, you don't write it with a single R. Otherwise, it's pronounced differently Osaro. So it is with a double R, a diagram. Then we have we also have it in Ore. We showed that earlier, Ore, so that those standing columns. When it's really up. See that the those already know this. Yes? Then you have the V represented by the diagram VB. By the diagram VB in array. But many people will pronounce array because the base form, the original form is array. Okay? And this sound, you see, this is part of the inconsistencies in the writing system of Nigerian languages, introduced by the British. You have the same sound in a it's present in a sound, but they use BH there to represent that sound. No. For instance, then it is in Urobo, but they use VW there in Kere, not Kere, it's Kere. Okay, so these are some of the inherited inconsistencies. The nasal consonants. As we said, there are 5 nasal consonants. Let's see what is to be used. The single letters are used for each of 2 of the 5 nasal consonants, whereas digraphs are used for the 3 others. So the sound means to use the single letter M to represent that. Like the letter M in green in the word Amen. And then you have the ni in a ni in a ni. That's totally different. Right? We said we are not going to discuss that. Right? So in a ni, the letter N is used to represent that sound. That is that sound. Then the 3 nasal consonants that you must use digraphs to represent in writing. Because we said any sound that has been identified must have either a single letter or a digraph to represent it. So in Edo currently, the first one is not a problem. That is the re in ume. The digraph NW is used. And nobody has any problem with that. Then look at this. In this umome, we is a reality in the book and must be represented by either single letter or a digraph. So in this case, we have exhausted all the single letters. Therefore, as we have for NW to represent me, we have NW to represent the we in umore, and one owe, and so on and so forth. Okay? So this is the way it must be written if you must have a correct orthographic form. NW is not new in the language, except that somewhere along the line, because probably, from my research, the influence of the Yoruba language, when we were under the Western regional government. So the books they presented was they didn't use NW, but they used Y, and it sounds we will see that shortly. Okay, so NW is the letter used for that particular sound, and a German scholar who wrote a fantastic dictionary for the language, published in 1937, used those diagrams. The diagram NW for we, and the diagram NY for me. In Inya, Adon, and yet. So here, the NW, NY, is the diagram for the sound ni in Inya. So if you have to, write a word in Inya, like I said, first of all, adopt the phonetic spelling strategy to know the sounds in a particular word. So you have E, Ni, A. There are three sounds. So you must look for a way to represent each of the sounds. Otherwise, your orthographic system is incomplete and inaccurate. So the NY, which is also used by Hans Melchior in 1937, is what should be used. Because currently, people write in Nya as I-Y-A-N. And that is incorrect. Incorrect orthographically and phonetically. We are going to see that. So look at this representation as the language is currently written. The letters O, W, E with a subdot and N. Sometimes many people don't even bother to put the subdot. Okay? And so when you analyze it on a one sound, one letter basis, as we have been doing so far, you will find that O, the letter O, is used to represent the sound O there. Then the letter W is used to represent the sound we. And the diagram E with a subdot followed by N is used to represent the sound N. And phonetically, that word will be pronounced as O-O-W. Okay? Not O-W. So the same way, the word I-Y-A-N, you see that the letter I represents the sound E, and then the letter Y represents the sound Y, and the diagram A-N represents the sound A. And so that sound, that word will be phonetically realized as Ijan. And I don't see any Edo person that will take that as the correct pronunciation for Inya. So, in the illustrations above, the consonants we similar to the one in Owa, and the consonant Yi similar to the one in Ije, and other consonants. It can be seen that the nasal consonants we and Yi are not represented in the two examples. This has clearly breached Rule 3 above, which says that no sounds should be left unrepresented. However, if we consider the representations below, the two nasal consonants would have been adequately accounted for. Let us see that. So look at the O that we had earlier. We had the letter O representing the sound O. We have the diagram NY representing the sound W. NW representing the sound W. And then the E with the subdot represent the letter N. But because of the nasal consonant in the language, anywhere you have a nasal consonant, any vowel that comes after is automatically nasalized. It's a rule of progressive nasal association that you have in virtually all the core languages. It's a phonetic. As stated earlier, we and ni, like me and ni, nasalize any oral vowel immediately following them. Hence, the nasalize and the nasalize in the examples above. In other words, an oral vowel cannot appear after a nasal consonant. It is also for the same reason that the letter N is not written after the letters. E with a subdot and A are seen above. Though some people will write Oman as O, sometimes without a subdot, MWAN. That is wrong. That is wrong. That N is redundant. It's not needed at all. And you will ask I will explain that. Although I have already said that, because Edo is an open syllable language. You don't have being in Edo as you have in English. B-I-N in Edo is pronounced B, not B. Okay? Then B-E-N. In English, we say Ben. Ben in Edo is Ben. That is the E-N. So the N must not be there. Anytime you have those 5 nasal consonants in writing, once you have them, any vowel that will come after them will not have an N following the name. So observe that in all the examples we have seen so far, no Edo word begins with a nasal vowel. No Edo noun begins with a nasal vowel. It must always be an oral vowel. Then 2, the letter N cannot be written after the vowel immediately following any of the 5 nasal consonants. That is, those currently writing or more as O subdot N, O subdot N, and then MN as E subdot NW, E subdot N, or Eni as ENIN, or OMO as ONWON, or Inya as INYAN. These are wrong forms. Those N after the vowel are not needed at all. Now we have X-rayed all the sounds, the 39 sounds in the language, isn't it? And we have used, we have been able to apply on a 1 sound, 1 letter basis the letters of the alphabet to represent each of the 39 sounds. That is a correct orthographic system. And that is why here we have ABiDi Edo, gbare, and their corresponding letters of the alphabet. So let us see that. The song we were taught in the private school in those days is wrong. When you say ABiDi Edo, because many sounds were left unrepresented, because it was based on the English format. Okay? So you have there, in alphabetic order, you have the A followed by the Then you have the D, you have the D, you have the E and the A, and then you have the E, and then followed by N. So A, B, D, A, N. That is what to sound, not the A, B, D, A, N. Because you must accommodate all the 39 sounds. Then continue. You have the C, D, G, B, G, E, E, D, G, B, G, E, E. You see that? continue. Here, we are not going to say A because, you know, in the Edo, the sound is key. And I've said, Edo is phonetic based. So it is the sound we are considering rather than the letters. So you have the key represented by the letter K there. So you say ki, ki, pi, li. Ki, ki, pi, li. Then mi, sorry. Mi, ni, ni. Then o, pi, ri. Then you are going to have the double R, that's the re, C, T, B, we, that is the ABiDi Edo. And I expect that one of our students here is there who actually, you know, volunteered to put it in this, you know, in a rhyme form. Okay? So where is it? So then we have seen that all the sounds, all the 39 sounds were accounted for in writing. And that is a complete alphabetic system. It is accurate, it is consistent. Okay? Now, there are other problems in writing Edo, especially when you are writing, because people do that a lot. That is, you know, writing running speech. That is, they are writing as if they are speaking. And then, because of the, you know, what we you know, speech tempo and all that, many sounds are elided. Many sounds are elided, as we are going to see. So, in formal writing, the note is that every word in a sentence should be fully written. Every word should be fully written. However, if running speech should be written as spoken, apostrophe should be appropriately inserted where a sound has been deleted. Now look at the following. We have a big and a do. So the left there in red, those are the vowels that are going to be compulsorily elided. So when you are writing them in running speech, you must place an apostrophe that place where that particular vowel has been elided or deleted. You see, the B, after the B, we have the apostrophe to indicate that there was a sound there that was elided. That is why you now have the running speech, a bedroom, a big Edo becoming a bedroom. Then you have Aga, a hat, becoming Ageha. Owe, a ne becoming Owene. Then Ogo, a sen becoming Ogise. Then you can see where the apostrophe must be inserted there. Then you have, you know, in this utterance, I bet, Obi, Osa, which is in running speech, I go Yosa. But you find there in red, the A of B has been elided. So when you are going to write that in running speech, the apostrophe must be where that sound was elided. So you have I go, you have Ore, Obo, Osa. I would say Orobosa. So, you know, in Edo, The addition process, vowel addition process, is a very common phenomenon. Then you have other examples in Ugu, Ne, Abu, which is Namu. So you can see where the apostrophe has started there. Then you have the other example. And then let us look at the third one there. Uru, say. That is the many people will just write as if it's a single word. No. You can see there, and some people even go to the extent of writing ROH. That is room. When you say
some there west.
That is the put of you. So these are wrongly written forms. Then you have, where after the nasal consonants, you see the letter A is right there. Those three letters are going to be elided in Roman speech. So Inya, Ime becomes Inyene. And that is where you have the nasal consonant now spreading nasality on the A, which ordinarily doesn't exist as a vowel of the soul. That is inherent nasal vowel. Here now it is nasalized. Here Inyene. They have Inyebo. You have Awebo, Awa, Ebu. Okay? Then you have Ewe, Oko. You have Oma, Ene. You have Unye, Oma. Coming Unyo. So the apostrophe must come after the letter I. Because that apostrophe is used to represent whether he with the subdot have been elided. So, indiscriminate use of the apostrophe as in the following example is not allowed. See, where there is no where they put the apostrophe there is no basis for it at all. Because if you see the base form, it is it is the A that is elided. So the apostrophe should come after the meaning, of the body of See, the order is referring to kind of anaphor. Then you have this one was something that actually, because if you look at this, what is on the screen there now, there is no need for all the apostrophe put indiscriminately there. Can you see? Yes, the apostrophe there are not where they should be. Completely, because people write anything they want, the way they want it, because we are all experts in the writing. That's not correct. It is slang. So, when examples 1, 2, and 3 present a perfect example of the indiscriminate use of apostrophe by some Edo writers. The correct reading forms of 2 and 3 using the apostrophe would be, this would be the correct form. Because Uyi, all day, Osa. So it's the A of all day that is elided. shows that because the E is not elided, it is realized as a glide. That's the glide formation rule, because there are rules, phonetic rules in the language that must be understood before you know where to put all these apostrophes. So you can see, where the correct apostrophe have to be. Then there is another problem, writing a deleted nasal vowel. Writing a deleted nasal vowel. You see, I put that deleted. Okay? Because it is the vowel that is deleted. The nasality is not deleted. It moves on to the next segment. And that is why you have soapman and over. The or soapman, when they are alive, the nasality moves on to the of over. And that is why you hear soapman. And that is where the side to the right of the arrow, where the apostrophe should be. Then you have upo, eva. Then you see A and O that are not there as inherent nasals. In this case, they acquire nasality. And that is why A, upo, eva, you now hear upo, eva. Then agban, ema, you hear agbema. So the A is now the one bearing the nasal feature. So you have other examples there. Upon, opo, upongo, epe, ene, epene. You have a pen or foko, a confoko. You see, N was the original vowel, the F was the original vowel with which it was coagulated, and now it moves on to form a confoko. And you see, the apostrophe there are not just played anyhow. Because you must understand the phonetic processes. And that is why all these things must be taught. Primary, secondary, and the tertiary level. They must be taught. Then we have, this is another teaching problem in the language. The need for the double N in some verbs. So you have verbs that people write anyhow today. For instance, bina. Bina has 2 syllables. The first syllable is bin. The other syllable is na. Then when people write, they just write gbare, which phonetically we realize as bia. And you will see the effect of that in many proper names. And you see, there was I tried to correct one person, and he got annoyed. They said, no. That is my name. I said, it's not your name. It's an Edo name. Your family just appropriated it. It is because language belongs to a speech community. But an individual. So in this case, once it is detected that that written form is wrong, we must correct it, no matter how late. So let's see, where we have such a problem. So let's look at as GDINA, and then combine it with OSA. That is Bina, OSA. But here, if you analyze it on a one sound, one letter basis, you are going to have bin osa after addition of the bin osa. And then if you say igbinosa, and you write bina with G-V-I-N-A, it's going to be phonetically igbinosa. Those who write, for instance, if it is not with the double N. So these are, crucial issues that must be. So look at it. You see, there is no Edo speaker who cannot pronounce the English equivalent of "I am under the protection of God." No Edo person. So these people pronounce it correctly. But when they are writing it, they write it wrongly. And that is where, if you remember my inaugural lecture 2012, it is, you may be, as a native speaker, you can pronounce any word in that language. But not necessarily being able to write it if you didn't learn it. That's what we say, Mr. Right. Saying it right is not necessarily writing it right. It's very. But these people can pronounce their names. Or, if I said they are appropriate names. Okay? But they cannot write it properly because it was the wrong. That phrase were written as G-B-I-N. As seen below.
Even a henete.
That's right. So you can see it being, if you look at that, it being osa. Look at the green with a single N, it becomes Igbiosa. The other one becomes Igbeweka. The other one becomes Igbi. But the people, their name is Igbinopoge. Then when they write it, when pronounced, it becomes Igbinopoge. Then you have Igbinoma here, which becomes Igbioma here. Igbi is a Scythian. Say, yeah, for everybody. A Scythian for everybody. Okay? Then you have in Ignosu, it becomes Ignosu. If you don't like if you choose a single N, it is Igbiobia. Okay? So the error arises from the fact that the writer failed to indicate clearly the lexical components of the utterances as the E, that's I, standing for the E, and that's personal pronoun, then the noun from the siege. Okay? That is the argument It's well made. So you can see when the double N is properly written, you now have E means na osa. I will have said that vowels are elided when two vowels come across water. So the R is going to be elided, and then nasal spread to the O, which becomes O, ignos. Then you have ignas, eweka. When the R elides, the nasal spread is now on the E. And now you have igneweka. Then you have ignogogi. So this way you have the proper and the accurately written form. You have the, you can also correctly written. So these are, another set of verbs that must be written compulsorily with double N. With double N. So you have Buno. If you write Buno with a single N, it's no longer this book up. But when you write, because there are two syllable words, all the words we have there, Buno, Bano, Dano, Dina, Duna, Tano, Tino, and so on and so forth. They must be written with double N. Then, this is another problem that we must also face, because currently, the rising and falling tones are not represented at all. And I can remember that we did a critic of what late OSD wrote. So we were now saying the funny word, for instance, if they want to write ba, that is go or leave, they will write KPA and they put O to represent that rising. But it's not. It's the same R you are hearing that bears a rising tone ba, not bow or bow. Okay? So that rising system, I don't know whether they have corrected it because I know we sent the critic to the ministry. So they didn't act on it. And they are still using those books to teach children. So in the process, you are going to have different reading forms, and this will confuse the students further, isn't it? Yeah, it will confuse them, because you have one written this way. But there's a standard way this thing should be written. Generally, when you have a rising tone like ba, when you are writing it, to account for that rising tone, you write K-P-A-A. Then if you must mark the tones, you put a grave accent on the first A and then acute accent on the second A. That's ba, be, de, and so on and so forth. Then if it is the other one, that is funny. Because the funny tone usually doesn't appear as a distinctive tone. It is the result of tonal assimilation or tone spreading. When a low tone follows a high tone in a word, the low tone is realized as a falling tone. That's what you have in the word like oka. Oka is what else again? Oko, and so on and so forth. You see, the word oka in Igbo is not pronounced the way it is pronounced in Edo. It is Oka.
Okay.
So you don't need to use double vowels there. But in the tone compulsory, because of that rule of tone spreading, we must put the two the A sounds there to indicate that there has been a phonetic process that happened. That is tone spreading. So in words like O, we write it as O-A-O-O. Acute accent on the first O, and then the grave accent on the second O. That is the reverse of the rising tone. So that is what we have in this session of the work. So there are a lot of examples there. The rising and the falling tones are represented in writing by doubling the vowels of the verb. The first vowel is marked with the grave accent and the second vowel with the acute accent in the case of the rising tone. And conversely, the first vowel is marked with the acute. That everyone is doing the wrong thing does not make it right. Recommendation. All written scripts in the language made for public consumption should be properly edited before publication. The standardized, harmonized, consistent, and accurate orthography presented here to be adopted for teaching the language at the various tiers of our educational system. The Benin Traditional Council Committee on Edo Language and Culture should be revived to enable it to play the role of coordinating all matters relating to the Edo language and culture as it has always done in the past. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. You know, the committee is very one. Four of us. You know, when I was growing up, somebody wanted to speak English after a presentation like this. They wanted to say it's not easy. Said it's not easy. It is not easy. You see, I tell people when you see people do what you can do, the best thing to do is to commend them. Please don't just have applause again. I want to believe that we have been well fed. You know, when he was about presenting, I said, let us quickly eat the breakfast. Now what I said? That it was good to serve it while it was hot, so that we will eat it and be well fed and satisfied. Before we move to questions, please permit me, following the observed protocol, to welcome some persons who walked in while Prof was delivering his lecture. In no particular order, I'm going to welcome my teacher, his senior colleague, one man who has also contributed in making me a better linguist today. He taught me from 100 level to final year, and he also taught me at the master's level. Please, can we make welcome Professor L.C. Luka. Multimedia teaches you generative syntax, and you don't know it in the rest of the day. You will not know it again. I'm not bragging, it is the truth. But you know, if there's one good thing about it, and I like it so much. We give you the assignment by 5 p.m. today and you submit it 10 a.m. in the morning. So we all loved it, you know, and it was fun those days. We also have in our presence Dr. M.S. Apo. Then we have also in our midst Mr. Aiko Obafo from the Institute for Benin Studies. Also came to join us. Thank you very much, sir. It's from the Department of
Calling Iradia.
Mr. Iradia, Senator. In the Department of Linguistics. I also have Mr. Enone Ekwakoy, one of the biggest publishers to have here in this city. Thank you very much. Dr. Mrs. INGS here. Also the house. Professor Mrs. E.M. Omoibe. This is one woman that has fought very readily to ensure that the Edo program in the department is sustained. In short, one of the brains behind what we are doing today is this amiable woman. She's my mother. We also have in our midst the secretarial staff of the great Department of Linguistics. In the hall. And so one of my great colleagues was a great Dr. Solomon Ethiopia. I want to see around this class. My mom is also here. You know, I have plenty mother. You know, the thing was I was speaking. They speak a little language. They also get papa and mama well. So I have my mom here, Professor Princess. Sorry, Ivie Uwa. She's the director of Arts here in Benin City. Thank you very much for your presence. I was told that we have some schools here well represented. We have a university staff school represented here. You are welcome, our great teachers. Mrs. Mrs. Epomoka, and what's the other name? Yazid Musa. You are highly welcome. I also have students from the UBTH Secondary School. You are all welcome. Great linguistic students. Linguistic students. Linguistic students. We cannot fail to recognize you. If you not recognize you, now waiting in you. You are highly welcome. Please have an applause for yourself. Thank you very, very much. Please, we don't want to waste much of our time. If you have any questions, please quickly put it in writing so that you read the questions. If you have any question, please quickly put it in writing and send it to me. The presentation we just saw and heard has a book to that effect, well written in a good language. $2,500. If you want before you leave, you see me, and we'll make you have a copy. But before we go, for those who don't have the money, we are going to give you a link to the presentation you just watched and listened to a while ago. So that when you go back home, you can go back to that link and rewatch the presentation. While we are still waiting for the questions, the chairman organizing committee just through our secretary just whispered to me that our fathers in the house are free to stand up to ask their questions, while the students should put their questions down in writing. Please want to hand the mic to Professor Elsie Yuka for his contribution or question. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to make a few comments. First is faculty of communication. Who has been doing quite a lot to be able to see what he can do to standardize the writing system. I'm even more impressed by the fact that there are quite a lot of young students from secondary school who have found it value additive to attend. And these are the people who should really focus on. If we want to make an impact, we'll be able to bring the change that we need. Now, to the lecture, I really enjoyed it, but I have just a few comments. I can see that the effort which the lecturer has been trying to make is to be able to achieve in writing. Sometimes many people don't know. I don't know whether you mentioned it that the effort to represent African languages in writing came a very long way. Unfortunately, we are beginning to behave, our generation is beginning to behave as if writing came with English. It actually didn't come with English. As a matter of fact, the English colonization, I should say, made great efforts to destroy what our forefathers, the efforts that they had made to translate speech into writing. And for Edo in particular, there was the development of the chemographic writing system, otherwise also known as pantography or pictorial writing system. This is a writing system that involved a combination of colors and graphs. And we need to probably go back to how this was developed and how effectively it worked, and see what we can tap from that past to be able to enhance our efforts at the development, the efforts that we're making now. And this does not only stop in Edo, it went all over maybe Africa, because you have the Egyptian hieroglyphics, you have the Ethiopian keys that spans over 300 BC, that was developed in 300 BC and 500 BC. You have the Basa script for the Basa people in Cameroon that were developed in 500 BC. And of course, you have the King Joya script that had a written document of over 1,000 pages. The French destroyed it, and it now sits, a copy of it now sits at the Peace Rivers Museum in the University of Oxford. So you can see that if you look around Africa, you will see that our people had made efforts to try to write their languages. We are now trying to do what I can call damage control, to try to get back to this one correspondent and be able to write which are all power languages. And maybe these are languages of the same stuff. And if we could make efforts if we could harmonize our efforts with the efforts of being done by the Igbo's, maybe by the Yoruba, of these languages, maybe we probably will do bigger work in a little bit of less time. Now, but in also so doing, we must be careful not to be too prescriptivist. A prescriptivist approach is generally leads to a lot of sharp ends. And you can see that generally we should write the way we speak. And when we begin to introduce complex sound representations, the learners probably will want to have a way to run away from it to something like that. And that's what beginning to happen in social media, for instance. You can see that this Android generation, when they want to write an, is AN. School is probably SCM and all of that. People are trying to rush towards economy of representation. So I want to say that I think that primary school and secondary school to begin to get involved in this. Language is our identity. And by the time we begin to see it being misrepresented in writing, and we don't say anything, and we don't do anything, that kind of generation will continue. I will just end here by thanking everybody who has put his hand in this program and encourage them. I thank Professor Mundo particularly and hope that we will not be tired because economic value they don't seem impactful in the immediate, and I hope that we will keep this energy for it. Professor Musa, thank you very much. Congratulations.
forefathers had a way of writing before the advent of the colonial experience. Yeah, but that the written form didn't go beyond that stage, because if you look at the mask and the what's it called, the ivory cast and the rest of them, if you go to the palace, for instance, for every reigning cover, you have set of bronze card that depict what happened during that reign. I mean, it is not the kind of writing system that was used by everybody. Okay, so that is when it was easy for the colonial masters to bring in their writing form, because one, they also needed that to be able to reach to everybody. Okay, and what did they do? It was sort of transposing their phonetic system to what our native speakers were saying, whether they heard it rightly or wrongly. And that is, the point we are making is that the confusion started from that point, because the right procedure was not adopted, because they were out to just get the minimum communications with the neighbors. Okay? And then what we are doing, if we don't correct it, it continues to go on. And then if you look at the use of our first topic that I talked about, it's alarming. Because if you don't draw attention to such things, people may think that they are doing of writing the language based on the structure of the language in the first instance. So if our forefathers had developed and known that line for everybody, it would have been easy. So meanwhile, we have to start from somewhere. By standardizing first, so that everybody will not just write whatever they want. That is the point we are making here. It is not a free-for-all kind of thing. We must have a standard. Okay? And that is the errors we are trying to correct.
Thank you very much, sir.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my name is Squadron Leader ABiDi Edo. I'm the president of the Benin Cultural Heritage Center. I'm a big critic of Professor Mozua regarding the lecture he has given today. But having listened to him twice, to his lecture twice, I'm convinced he has done an excellent job. One of your promoters. But before I want to make this, your effort will be recognized without the talent dimension. Benis are a unique tribe in Africa. And the palace has control over a lot of things, culture, history, and also language rights. I did suggest it in the you will bring this into the notice of the other of Benin. Maybe you call a team, you read them, and from there on, from there on, it will be decreed. This is the way forward. All teachers already learned the Edo language, how to write it, and there were, I jotted down some things, but I haven't listened all to you answer all of them. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You see the issue of switching out parties. We have discussed that separately. And then if you listen to one of my recommendations is that there is supposed to be a committee on the Edo language and culture in the palace. Okay? So that committee is no longer functioning. That is the only way you can read the for audience like that, and then the writing form that Dr. Wesley was introducing. And he said, no. Writing it. My long run before the presentation, I sent 5 copies to the parents. He read, everything because he was an avid reader. He read everything. After the presentation of my inaugural, we went to thank him because he sent 4 palace chiefs to represent him in that occasion. And he was asking salient questions, which we also provide, answers. That is the way it is not for the parents to just say, okay, from today, this one is going to not like that. Language do not work like that. Even in the French system, we have the and anything that that committee is still there. It started in the 15th century. Okay? So it's still functioning. When if you don't have a committee, say, okay, you write a letter, you want to see the offer. No, that is not the it is the committee in the palace there. They should revive it. That was what I said. It should be revived. So when it is revived and these things are presented, then a forum will be there where he will be seated like his father was doing and say, okay, you have said it, how is this? And that's the way it is. And then you start from the primary and secondary schools. It is the school system that actually determines what is taught. Like what somebody said in one of the fora. They said, okay, sir, with all due respect. They said, go and teach any version of it. I said, no. The variety of it. Doesn't even have 2 different. And
Just one little issue concerning the lesson so far. The issue that concerns the running speech that our father talked about, the contraction and the addition, before was being replaced by apostrophe. Remember in my days when we taught comprehension, our teacher did not accept any form of contracted word in our letters. I remember he told us that was an informal way of writing. A more formal way of writing to represent every word separately without addition. I also want to add that the issue of contraction and addition that apostrophe is very confusing for people that are not as competent as some of us are in the language. Because you might see a word and an apostrophe has a put before it. You will know if you are not competent enough in the language, you will not be able to ascertain the sound that has been enlightened. So for that reason, I want to say that the use of contraction should be discouraged in totality. Because people that write in contraction, they understand what they are writing perfectly. But the person that wants to use it, people that want to write, to read it, it might take us some time to be able to comprehend what that word is for. For that one. I think the issue of dotting, we are in a technological era where most of us will write with our phones, write to our laptops and the rest of the things. And our language, people that produce computer and the rest things, really have our language at the back of their minds. So it's hard to find a key in our laptop. It's hard to find a key in our laptop that has an X or an O, unless you are learning the language to be able to program it. So I know about the switch keyboard that you can use in your phone. The switch keyboard. So that's about it.
Now, you see, I will quickly respond to the two. Running speech in writing. I brought that in because it's a problem that is already there. And you saw the way somebody, put apostrophe just anywhere he likes. So I cannot read that kind of thing without responding to it. I am not saying that you should go and be teaching the where you put the apostrophe. They should leave it. Because you are confusing everybody. It's not the teachers or the students we are talking about. We are talking of the audience in multimedia like that. Okay? Then too, your excuse. You see, we are always looking for one excuse or the other not to do the right thing at the right time. Don't say that, no provision for self-doctrine and all that. That's a lie. Say that, they are there. If you are not able to do it, that means you are lazy. Okay? Yes, this is there. And then the switch keyboard is what everybody use Android today. If you want to write in anything people, Yoruba, Edo, and the rest of them, all the self-doctrine and the rest, they are all there. But we don't have the patience to learn. Go and learn it, we will use it. So don't give me excuses here.
Thank you very much, sir. Please, I will beg my fathers to hold on. I want to call on the HOD to please introduce the journal. After them, we'll continue with the questions. But the HOD has another meeting to attend. Please. Please. HOD, ma'am.
President, I want to thank you for spending so much time to be with us even to this hour. I want to appreciate you, Daddy, for the work well done. You've always done your work well, and you've done it so well that we are extremely proud of you. And we are happy to have you here to dish out the word to everybody here present, and we believe that it will take us far and help the language from this problem that we've been encountering for days. I want to especially thank and all the staff members, especially our chairman of the organizing committee, for having such a beautiful seminar this afternoon. And before I go, I want to let us know that the seminar has given birth to a journal. We have now been able to bring out the journal from the first seminar and even the second one to give birth to the first journal, which we intend to come out towards the end of this year. And the journal is called Eden, a journal of Edo studies. So we are welcoming the clients around so that we can see the requirements for us to be able to send in our papers. Please, we are advised that you follow the guidelines so that you don't need to return your papers here and there. And so we appreciate if your paper goes out in the edition, which will go the first week of, or first or second week of 2022. The journal will be out. So the journal will tell the chairman of the organizing committee to put it in the website, our website, so that you can really get access to it and ask whatever questions you want to ask. We want to let us know that this came up as a result of our daddy, Professor Victor Edo, who said he really wants us to carry Edo to heights of 20. We have been teaching students, and yet it will not be right if we don't have an Edo center here in the University of Benin. When you talk about the Edo language, it's actually in the University of Benin that the root began. So it will not be wise if you don't have an Edo center. So we are working so tirelessly to make sure that we come out with something so beautiful, so that even children abroad can come over during their long vacation to study. So we are looking forward to having a program that we handle that. Thank you very much, Rob. I'm so happy and I'm so proud of you. God bless you, sir. People that came around. And before we do that, honor must be given to whom honor is. God has done so much. All this is doing, we have not paid him a dime. And he's never ever tired whenever we talk about it. Many of us have seen reasons why we must write a bill the way he has said we should write a bill, so that they will be consistent. And I want to appreciate him on behalf of the Department of Linguistic Studies, especially the arm of the Edo language. We want to give him a certificate of appreciation. I want to extend this to you, Paul. I will know that you appreciate God bless you. We also want to appreciate the different schools that came to grace this seminar with us. First, on our school unit-based demonstration secondary school, we have a teacher that came to represent the school. So we have certificate of appreciation for them. Do we have any teacher here? Anybody around? Okay. Yes, so it's there. Yes. Okay. Please. Thank you so much. Come on, sir. Yeah. So please present this to you on behalf of your school for attending this second seminar. God bless. All right. Again, we have University School. University School, Amazema, Tawi. They wore the uniform here, and we are really proud of them. We want to give this certificate of participation to their head teacher, the Edo unit, for taking time to come over here, please, ma'am. Beautiful children. It's not just to wear the t-shirt, we want you to learn how to speak and write and do very well. So that by the time you are getting into the secondary school, you feel us really proud. God bless you. I present this to you on behalf of the Department of English. Thank you. We have UBTA Staff School. UBTA Staff School. I'm so happy that you are here. This shows that you have the Edo language as a subject in school. And we know that you have learned a lot and you take it back to your school. God bless you. Thank you. For those that still need the certificate, please, the chairman, you hand over your email address or your phone number to the chairman so that when it's ready, or if you don't have them here, so if you want to utilize with him, then he will give you. I have another engagement, and that's why I want to run out for this period. I want to appreciate everybody once again. I appreciate you, and when we are preparing for the third seminar, I know you will also be our guest. God bless you, and bless you with you.
Thank you very much, my God bless you, man. So after what she has said concerning the journal is not only for those of us who are in the Department of Linguistics, but it's for everybody who is interested in the Edo language. Edo language studies, or Edo studies, as the case may be. So, Edo language, Edo literature, Edo culture, Edo religion, Edo education, Edo philosophy. Then, those in the Department of Sociology, as far as and you want to do something on the Edo language, the journal is open for you. So we'll go back to our questions. So that's a call on Mr. Omage, President, Mr. Kovacu, please, will be the next. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you.